who's the CEO of the Refugee Council.
The start point must be the appalling international situation and the way, as Giles has said, European nations collectively and individually have flunked it. The way we've stood by, blocked our ears up, turned our backs, tried to build our walls is absolutely shaming and shameful. A complete and utter failure of empathy and understanding for why people make hideous, hazardous journeys. At every stage, Europe's response has been to calibrate what is the least possible we can do and get away with it. And at the moment when we give people this wonderful prize, this wonderful gift of protection in the UK and the chance to rebuild your lives in safety and stability and to have the privileges that we all enjoy as citizens of the UK, at that very point, we leave people in the lurch. We give them 28 days to sort their lives out. If they haven't, at the end of the 28 days, their accommodation stops, their benefit stops, and they're kicked out onto the street. It's created a backlash. And it's not just been a rhetorical backlash, it's been people getting up and saying, if my government isn't going to do anything, I'm going to do something. And of course, all set against the background of austerity and the intolerance within the host community that austerity brings, because people look for scapegoats and look for easy answers, and migrants are always first in line for that. I'm going to end on a confident note, though, on a positive note. Public and civil society engagement with the whole issue of refugee protection and the care of migrants more broadly has revolutionised, from the business community, from the faith community, from local authorities. The Syrian refugee programme, 20,000 people coming over the next few years, many of whom will go to areas that have never seen a refugee. And here is an opportunity for us to start that process of encouraging empathy amongst our fellow citizens. And the way empathy starts is by sitting down and listening to people's stories and imagining, what would I do in their set? What would I do if I was on the shoreline in Libya? Would I get on that boat with my family and put them in that threat? Yes, you probably would. As I've said, it's a rational decision. So a number of challenges, but boy, look at this crowd here today on a brilliant hot sunny afternoon, come into a rather dark, thankfully cool room. Gives me great confidence that we're up for this fight, and it's a fight, let's make no bones about it. But it's a fight I think we can win, and I think there is plenty of evidence that when we do organise, when we do come together, when we do see a unanimity of purpose, we can move mountains and we can change the world.
So basically, this is what the President says. He says, the spotlight in these proceedings is on an area just across the English Channel from Dover. It has become known colloquially as the jungle. This is a bleak and desolate place adjacent to Calais on the coast of northern France. It attracts this appellation not without good reason. Unlike other jungles, this place is inhabited by human beings, not animals. And then the judge then goes on to actually extract and attach a great deal of weight to the NGOs who were working there. And he quotes one representative who says, "I have just returned from the camps in Calais and Dunkirk, where thousands of migrants have temporary homes. The conditions are so bad that describing them cannot capture the squalor. You have to smell conditions like these and feel the squelch of mud mixed with urine and much else through your boots to appreciate the horror." And then the judge says, in summary, "The conditions prevailing in this desolate part of the earth are about as deplorable as any citizen of the developed nations could imagine." The problem, the legal but really political problem that the President had, is that the EU, the Dublin regulations, they're not discretionary. You have to apply them. You have no choice. However sorry you feel for that particular person, if there is a person in a safe third country, and France was safe, then everything has to take their course. And the main point used against the children and the vulnerable adult in the Calais, in the jungle, was that you have not claimed asylum in France. You're in France, you're in a safe third country, what's wrong with you? Claim asylum. France has got this system where, if you're an unaccompanied child, you are given a residence permit until you turn 18. So you're actually legally allowed, So we don't really, I'm France, I don't really care about you, but if you're a child, do what you want, and you can reside here, turn 18, come 18, we'll sort out your asylum claim, okay? As a result, there isn't a massive incentive to actually deal with the asylum claim. If you do claim asylum, it makes family reunion more difficult. So these kids and vulnerable adults, who've all got family members just a few miles away, are stuck in this really, really difficult place. So the way that the judge gets round it is he says, I'm not going to consider this case under the Dublin regulation, because you're probably not going to win. I'm going to consider it under Article 8, which is the right to respect for family life. And as far as I'm concerned, if these vulnerable kids and adults who are there now, who are suffering now, and will be subject to a long process, and who are being harmed now because of the separation, if they are not reunited with their family in the UK, they will suffer serious harm. And that was all clear on the facts. And as a result, the judge made an order, actually ordered the Home Office to grant admission to all of the applicants, that's the children and the mentally ill adults, to come to the UK. And I think if you get the impact of that judgment, it really is quite phenomenal. In summary, immigration law, tough, it gets tougher with Theresa May, it's really hard to win, no matter how strong it is, we all go through eviction. But this is a great case. I think the Home Office may be appealing it, but it is a real tool, and it's not difficult to understand. You have a client who's got those pressing needs, go to a law centre, because law centres, the few that remain, are awesome, and get them in. Thank you.
Next up, we have Abdulaziz.
I am from Syria originally. I came to the UK in 2009 to do my PhD. And when the Syrian conflict, the Syrian revolution started in 2011, I became politically active against the brutal Syrian regime. Because of my activism, I had no choice but to claim for asylum in the UK. I remember on April 2011, I was contacted by the Syrian embassy, and they asked me to join a pro-Assad demonstration outside the Syrian embassy, because we used to have two demos, one against the government and one with the government. At the first, I actually didn't have the courage to say no, and equally, I didn't want to join a protest, a demonstration to support a brutal dictator. So I had to lie. I said to them, well, I don't live in London, I live in Birmingham, I am busy, so I wasn't able to join them. However, a few weeks later, my uni mate, which I left with 3 years during our university studies in Aleppo, he was shot dead in Hamas city in the street. And for a few days, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't speak. I was absolutely shocked when I saw his footage on Al Jazeera, and he was shot dead because he peacefully protested in the street, demanding freedom, reforms, and reconciliations. Since then, I openly started leading demonstrations outside the Syrian embassy. I organized many demos against the Assad regime, and I didn't want to claim for asylum, to be fair, because I had a hope. Okay, Assad, within a few months, he will go, then I can go back home, because I had Syria, I have home, I have family, I have friends, I have a safe place back home. But unfortunately, Assad went far away of using his armed forces to crush peaceful protesters in Syria, and with the lack of actions from the international community, we found it impossible. My visa expired, my passport expired, 2 years after the conflict, I had no choice but to claim for asylum. But I consider myself to be one of the luckiest refugees, because I didn't have to risk my life to cross the Mediterranean, for example, to reach Europe and claim for asylum. I didn't leave the terror of barrel bombs or chemical attacks or the terror of ISIS in Syria, while many Syrians, like hundreds of thousands of Syrians, had to leave these circumstances. In Syria, we have been a home. Syria has been a home for refugees throughout our history. We welcomed the 3 million Iraqi refugees in 2003 when the West invaded Iraq, and we felt the consequences of the invasion, not the West. We had refugees from Lebanon, we had refugees from Kuwait, and not only Arab and Muslim refugees we had refugees from Armenia. We have 500,000 Armenian refugees. I am a proud Syrian because in Syria we never built a tent for refugees. We welcomed them in our homes, we welcomed them in our schools, in our universities. And it is absolutely shocking to see Calais, which is a town, a jungle, whatever you call it, like in between two countries who are permanent member of the UN Security Council, and they failed to deal with it. Britain is a great nation. The British people are so hospitable. I can see loads of volunteers go to Calais to deliver humanitarian aids. And the British public made it very clear. Last year, we initiated a campaign in solidarity with refugees, and more than 100,000 people joined our march to say refugees are welcome here. And the response of David Cameron to take in 20,000 refugees by 2020 is absolutely disgusting. This is not a response. This is out of touch. And why do we have a crisis, a refugee crisis? Because people like David Cameron don't want to stand up, to do the right thing, to take their fair share of refugees. Trust me, the vast, overwhelming majority of refugees are not happy to leave their homes. They had homes, now they are homeless. They had jobs, now they are jobless. But with our solidarity, with our support, certainly they will not become homeless. Thank you very much.
As you've heard, my name is Councillor Michael Shitu. I'm the Cabinet Member for Communities. We've been very clear that Southwark is a very welcoming environment for refugees. We will do all we can do within the powers open to us to support refugees, and we will continue to work with refugees as well. Southwark has been a huge beneficiary of refugees and migrants settling in Southwark over the past few decades. We can talk about countless positions in both business, in NHS, in education, where refugees are playing an instrumental role to improve our society indeed. And I think it's right to offer the opportunity for those who do want to contribute in Southwark to continue to do so. We also know that in order to continue to do what we do, we need to work with other local authorities in order to make sure that actually we're not acting in silo, that we build greater consensus with other neighboring boroughs through the local government association itself. But we know we can do more, and that's why we want you to challenge us, to tell us what more you would want us to do, how you would want us to do it, and let us go back so that we can see what more we can do in order to address it. I will finish off by saying a huge thank you for all the work you've done. None of the achievement till date would have been possible without your work at all. I will encourage you to continue doing so. The council stands shoulder to shoulder with you, and we would hope that in future we can certainly find a better environment for refugees in Southwark. Thank you.
It's hugely encouraging to find on a beautiful day like today, where everybody wants to be outside and eating ice cream, we've all come in here and listened to this fantastic presentations, and we're all here because it's important to us and it makes a difference. And will you join me in thanking